The bridge of the vanguard was silent, save for the low hum of the engine. General Vex stood by the huge window, looking down at the small blue and green planet. It looked so peaceful from up here. It looked weak. To Vex and his people, the Kythorian Empire, this planet was just another rock waiting to be crushed. They had done this 1,000 times before. They would arrive, the people below would scream and beg for mercy, and then the Empire would take everything. Vex touched a panel on the wall. It was time to send a message. He did not feel angry. He felt bored. This was just a job. On the ship's main screen, a map of the planet appeared. Red targets covered the major cities. "Open the channel," Vex ordered. His voice was deep and cold. An officer, a tall gray alien with 4 arms, typed quickly. "Channel open, sir. They can hear us on every device on the planet." Vex leaned forward. He spoke slowly. "People of Earth. I am General Vex of the Kythorian Empire. You have lived in the dark for too long. We are here to bring you order. You have 1 hour to lay down your weapons and come out of your cities. If you do not, we will burn your world until nothing is left." He stopped talking. The officer cut the feed. Message sent. Timer started. Down on the surface of Earth, panic began. In the city of Seoul, people stopped walking in the streets. They looked up at the sky where the massive shadow of the alien ship covered the sun. Cars crashed as drivers stared in fear. The news screens on tall buildings showed Vex's face over and over again. It felt like the end of the world. But deep inside a mountain, far away from the crowds, there was no panic. This was the base of the United Defense Coalition, or the UDC. The walls were made of thick concrete and steel. Deep underground, in a room full of bright screens, David sat in a chair. He was a man in his 40s, with short brown hair and tired eyes. He was drinking coffee from a plastic cup. He did not look scared. Next to him stood Lisa. She was young, with red hair tied back in a ponytail. She was biting her lip, looking at the big screen in the front of the room. It showed a countdown timer. It said 59 minutes and 30 seconds left. "Did you hear his voice?" Lisa asked. She sounded nervous. He sounded so sure. "He thinks we are going to surrender." David took a sip of coffee. "He thinks that because everyone else does." On the other side of the room, Mark was cleaning a pair of glasses. Mark was older, with gray hair and a strong build. He was a soldier, a man who had fought in many wars. He put his glasses on and looked at the tactical map. "They have a big ship," Mark said. "But look at the position. They are parked right in the geostationary orbit. They are arrogant. They think they are safe." "They are not safe," David said quietly. He stood up and walked to the main map. He pointed to a red dot that represented the alien ship. "Lisa, is the target locked?" Lisa typed on her keyboard fast. Her fingers flew across the keys. "Yes, sir. The target is locked. The Titan protocol is ready. We are just waiting for your command." David looked at the countdown. 58 minutes. "Don't rush," David said. "We have to wait for the right moment." In space, General Vex was getting impatient. He walked around the bridge. "Why have they not replied?" he asked. "Do they not know who we are?" "Scanners show no movement from their military bases," the sensor officer said. "But, there is a strange energy reading coming from the dark side of the moon." Vex frowned. "The moon, what is there?" "I do not know, sir. It is very faint. It looks like a machine, but it is not on our charts from the last scan. Vex waved his hand. It is probably a mining station. Ignore it. Focus on the planet. If they do not surrender in 10 minutes, fire the warning shot at their largest ocean. Back in the UDC base, the phone on David's desk rang. He picked it up. It was James, the leader of the Wraith Squadron. James was currently sitting in a cockpit, waiting on a runway in the desert. "David here," David said into the phone. "We are ready to launch," James said. His voice was calm, like a man going for a drive, not a pilot going to war. "My team is here. Anna is checking her engines. We are just waiting for the green light." "Hold tight, James," David said. "We are about to get their attention." David hung up. He looked at Lisa. "How are the calculations?" "The trajectory is perfect," Lisa said. "The drone is in position. It is stealth, so they cannot see it on radar. It is floating just 2 miles from their main engine exhaust." David nodded. This was the plan. For years, the world governments had been secretly building a weapon. They knew that one day, someone would come from the stars. They knew they could not fight a huge ship with normal guns. They had to be smart. They had to use physics. "Mark," David said. "Is the EMP package ready?" Mark smiled. "It is armed and dangerous. It will fry their electronics in a second. They won't know what hit them." On the screen, the timer ticked down. 50 minutes. General Vex sat back in his chair. "They are ignoring us," he said, sounding annoyed now. "Fine. Prepare the main cannon. Target the North Pole. We will show them we are serious." "Sir!" the weapons officer shouted. "I am detecting a launch from the surface. It is small, very fast. It is heading toward us." Vex stood up. "Is it a missile? Shoot it down." "It is too fast, sir. It is not a normal missile. It is, wait. It just stopped. It is right next to the hull." Before Vex could say anything, a blinding white light flashed outside the ship. It was not an explosion. It was a pulse of pure magnetic energy. The lights on the bridge flickered and died. The red emergency lights turned on. The hum of the engine stopped. The silence was broken by alarms screaming in the background. "What is happening?" Vex yelled. "Report. Shields are down." An officer screamed. "We have lost main power. The engines are dead. We are drifting." Back in the UDC base, Lisa smiled. "Direct hit, sir. The EMP worked. Their shields are gone. They are sitting ducks." David walked to the front of the room. He looked at the screen. The big red dot was now gray, indicating the ship had no power. The alien empire was strong, but they relied too much on their machines. Take away the machines, and they were just strangers in a tin can. "They expected us to fight them with tanks and planes," David said to the room. "They expected us to be afraid. They forgot that humans are very good at finding weak spots." He picked up the microphone on his desk. His voice went out to the Wraith Squadron. "James, this is David. The bird is down. The shields are offline. Go. Now." In the desert, James pushed the throttle forward. The engine roared to life. Behind him, Anna did the same. Then Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Chris. 6 planes shot into the sky, faster than sound. They were not normal planes. They were the Wraiths, built with alien technology found years ago. "We are airborne," James said into his radio. "Heading to the target." "Godspeed," David replied. David looked at the timer again. 45 minutes left. "We don't need 45 minutes, David said to himself. He looked at Mark and Lisa. "Let's show the galaxy what Earth can do." He pressed a button on his console. On the moon, a massive machine opened its eyes. It was a railgun, built into the rock of the moon itself. It was so big you could see it from Earth with a telescope. But no one knew it was there until now. The aliens on the bridge of the Vanguard were running around in the dark. Vex grabbed his second in command. "Fix the power!" he shouted. "Get the shields back up." "I can't," the officer cried. "The pulse burned out the circuits. It will take hours to fix." "Then hail them," Vex yelled. "Tell them we accept their surrender. Tell them to stop." Vex looked out the window. He saw the small Earth fighters approaching, and he saw the energy spike coming from the moon. For the first time in his life, General Vex felt a cold chill in his stomach. He had a terrible feeling that he had made a mistake. He had kicked a hornet's nest, and the hornets were coming out. The blue planet below did not look so peaceful anymore. It looked dangerous. David watched the screen. The aliens were trying to communicate. He ignored it. "Phase 1 complete," David said. "Phase 2 initiating." The 14 minutes had not started yet, but the end for the Kythorian Empire had already begun. David took a deep breath. The easy part was over. Now came the noise. The bridge of the Vanguard was in chaos. The red emergency lights cast long, scary shadows across the metal walls. Alarms were blaring, a loud, repeating noise that hurt the ears. Smoke began to rise from a control panel on the left side of the room. The smell of burning electrical wires filled the air. General Vex stood in the middle of it all, gripping the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. He was a commander who was used to winning. He was used to enemies running away from him. But now, his own ship was dead in the water, floating helplessly in the darkness of space. "What is the status of the shields?" Vex shouted over the noise of the alarms. A young officer with shaking hands typed on a keyboard, but the screen in front of him was black. "Nothing, sir. The EMP wave burned out the main power grid. The shields are gone. We are running on emergency batteries only. Life support is at 50%. Vex let out a growl of frustration. He looked out the huge window at his fleet. The other ships were fine, but they were too far away to help. They were watching, confused. He looked down at Earth. That tiny blue planet had just struck the biggest ship in the galaxy with a single blow. How, Vex whispered to himself. They are primitives. They should not have this technology. Down on the surface, in the UDC base, the mood was different. It was not chaotic, it was focused and intense. David stood in the center of the command room, watching the main screen. The red dot representing the Vanguard was blinking. "Lisa, give me a status report," David said calmly. Lisa looked at her monitor. "The alien ship is drifting, sir. Their engines are offline. Their comms are jammed. They are completely blind." David nodded. "Good. Mark, are the fighters in position?" Mark was standing by a radar screen that showed green blips moving quickly through the upper atmosphere. "Yes, sir. The Wraith Squadron has passed the atmosphere. They are entering low orbit now. The aliens cannot detect them on radar because we are using the stealth coating. In the cockpit of the lead Wraith fighter, James adjusted his oxygen mask. The space around him was dark and quiet, save for the sound of his own breathing. Below him, he could see the curve of the Earth, a beautiful mix of blue and white clouds. Above him, the massive alien ship looked like a giant gray mountain against the stars. It was terrifyingly big, but it looked dead. No lights flickered on its hull. Wraith 1 to base, James spoke into his radio. I have visual on the target. It looks like a sitting duck. They are not moving. Copy that, Wraith 1, David's voice came through the headset. Proceed with Phase 2. Deploy the gravity wells. James looked at his display. Next to him, flying in perfect formation, was Anna. She was his wingman and one of the best pilots he knew. You heard the boss, Anna, James said. Let's trap this whale. Copy that, James, Anna replied. Her voice was steady. Dropping the payload in 3, 2, 1. The small fighters moved toward specific points around the massive alien ship. They were not firing guns or missiles. They were dropping small, silver spheres that looked like metal balls. These were the gravity wells. As soon as the spheres left the bottom of the fighters, they activated. Inside the alien ship, the sudden change was immediate. Vex was thrown to the floor as the ship suddenly shuddered. The artificial gravity systems inside the ship went wild. Things that were on the tables floated into the air, then crashed down as the gravity spiked. Report. What was that? Vex screamed, pulling himself up. Sir, the gravity outside the ship is changing. The sensor officer yelled, looking at a screen that was barely working. There is a gravity field forming around us. It is like a net. We are stuck. The gravity wells did not destroy the ship. Instead, they warped the space around it. They created a pocket of heavy gravity that locked the Vanguard in place. The ship could not move forward or backward. It could not turn. Even if they fixed the engines, they would not be strong enough to escape the grip of the gravity wells. James watched from his cockpit as the silver spheres glowed purple. The space around the alien ship seemed to shimmer. Target is locked, James said. They aren't going anywhere. Wraith 2 to base, Anna said. The wells are active. We have them trapped. Back in the control room, Mark let out a short laugh. Look at that, he said to Lisa. They have no idea what hit them. 1 minute they are the emperors of space, the next minute they are flies in amber. Lisa smiled, but her eyes stayed on the screen. Don't celebrate yet, Mark. The trap is set, but now we have to finish it. David walked to the center of the room. He looked at the large countdown timer on the wall. It was no longer counting down to an invasion. It was counting down to an execution. The primary objective is complete, David said into the room microphone. The enemy is immobilized. Now, we prepare the final strike. Dr. Emily, is the moon cannon ready? On a separate video feed, Dr. Emily appeared. She was sitting in a small, control room deep underground, but she was not controlling a tank or a plane. She was controlling the biggest gun ever made. It was built inside the moon, masked as a crater. It used the moon's own rotation to charge its power. Energy levels are at 90%, David, Emily said. She looked tired but excited. The magnetic rails are charged. We just need to acquire the target lock. Do it, David ordered. On the bridge of the Vanguard, General Vex was panicking. He had never felt panic before. He looked at his crew. They were looking at him with fear in their eyes. They were waiting for orders, but Vex did not know what to say. "We have to break out of this gravity field," Vex said. "Use the backup thrusters." "Sir, the thrusters are not responding," an officer cried. "The gravity is too strong. It is crushing the hull." Suddenly, a new light appeared on the sensor panel. It was a small light, but it was growing brighter. It was coming from the moon. "Sir!" the weapons officer shouted. "I am detecting a massive energy buildup on Earth's moon. It is off the charts." Vex ran to the window. He couldn't see anything from this distance, but he could feel it. The hair on his arm stood up. There was a vibration in the metal of the ship. "What is it?" he asked. "Is it a rocket, a bomb?" I don't know," the officer stammered. "The energy signature is wrong. It is not a bomb. It is kinetic." In the UDC base, the room began to hum. The power required for the moon cannon was so high that the lights in the base dimmed for a second. "Target locked," Lisa announced. "The Vanguard is in our sights." "Fire," David said. The command was simple. It was just one word. But it carried the weight of the entire human race. On the moon, the massive railgun fired. There was no fireball, no explosion. Just a sudden, blinding flash of light as a projectile was launched. The projectile was a simple tungsten rod, about 20 feet long. It wasn't explosive. It was just a very heavy piece of metal moving at an incredible speed. It was traveling at 10% of the speed of light. It crossed the distance between the moon and the Earth in seconds. James saw it first. A bright streak of light shot past his cockpit. "Whoa!" he yelled. "That is fast." "Pull back, Wraith Squadron," David's voice came over the radio. "Clear the area immediately." James banked his ship hard to the left. "All units, evasive maneuvers. Get out of the blast zone." Anna followed close behind. "Did you see that? It looked like a star falling." General Vex on the Vanguard saw it too. The streak of light grew larger and larger in the window. It was coming right at them. "Evasive action!" Vex screamed. "Move the ship." "It's too late, sir," the helmsman shouted. "Impact is imminent." The tungsten rod slammed into the front of the Vanguard. Because the ship was trapped by the gravity wells, it couldn't move out of the way. The kinetic energy was so massive that the ship didn't just break, it disintegrated. The rod punched through the thick armor like a hot knife through butter. It went through the bridge, the engine rooms, and out the back. In a fraction of a second, the largest ship in the Kythorian Empire turned into a cloud of superheated gas and dust. There was no sound, but the flash was blinding. The shock wave expanded outward, vaporizing the gravity wells and everything nearby. Back on Earth, the room was silent. They watched the screen where the red dot had been. Now, there was nothing. "Target destroyed," Lisa whispered. Mark let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "My God! They're gone." "Just like that." David nodded. "The flagship is down. But look at the sensors." Lisa tapped a key. The screen changed to show the rest of the fleet. There were still thousands of smaller ships behind where the Vanguard had been. They were scattered, confused, and leaderless. "They saw what happened to the boss," Mark said, pointing at the screen. "They are scared. Look, they are trying to turn around." "No," David said, his voice hard. They don't get to leave. Not yet. We have to send a message. He looked at the timer. 8 minutes had passed. They had 6 minutes left. Reload the cannon, David commanded. In the cockpit of his fighter, James watched the dust cloud settle where the alien ship used to be. That was for Earth, he said quietly. James, Anna's voice came over the comms. Look at the moon. It's spinning up again. James looked. The moon was bright with energy again. They aren't stopping, are they? No, Anna replied. They are just getting started. The aliens had come to conquer. They had come to enslave. They did not know that Earth was not a planet of sheep. It was a planet of wolves. And now, the wolves were hunting them. The silence of space was broken, not by the sounds of war, but by the terrifying efficiency of humanity's defense. The 14 minutes were ticking away, and the terror was just beginning. The explosion of the Vanguard was silent, a beautiful and terrifying bloom of orange and blue fire expanding in the blackness of space. For a few seconds, the debris cloud looked like a new star. But then, the light faded, leaving behind nothing but dust and twisted metal. The largest warship in the Kythorian Empire, a vessel that had conquered entire star systems, was gone. It had not fallen in a great, long battle. It had been erased in a single second by a rock thrown very, very fast. On the bridge of a nearby support ship called the Krell, a ship that was the size of a large city, the crew was frozen. They had watched the destruction of their flagship on the main view screen. The captain of the Krell, a tall alien named Commander Hax, stood with his mouth open. His skin, usually a pale purple, had turned a shade of gray with fear. The Vanguard is destroyed, a sensor officer whispered. There are no life signs. General Vex is dead. How Hax shouted, slamming his fist onto the console. It was one shot. One projectile. They do not have that kind of power. The energy reading came from their moon, the officer said, his voice shaking. It was a kinetic strike. Absolute pure velocity. Hax looked at the tactical map. The thousands of ships in his fleet were scattered. They had been following the Vanguard like ducklings following their mother. Now the mother was gone, and the ducklings were lost. Alarms were blaring on every ship. Order the fleet to retreat. Hax yelled. Take us out of orbit. We need to regroup. He waited for the ships to turn. But nothing happened. The fleet remained still. Helmsman, why are we not moving? Hax demanded. The gravity, sir. The helmsman cried, pushing buttons frantically. We are caught in the wake of the gravity wells the humans deployed. The space around us is unstable. Our engines are struggling against the gravitational pull. We are stuck. Back on Earth, deep in the underground bunker, David watched the chaos on the big screen. The red dots representing the alien fleet were trying to move, but they were sluggish. They were confused. Mark, status on the fleet? David asked. Mark was typing rapidly on his keyboard. They are trying to run, sir. But the gravity wells did their job. They disrupted the space around the formation. The ships are drifting. Their navigation systems are going crazy because of the interference from the explosion. They are sitting targets. David nodded. Good. They came here to destroy us. They don't get to run away just because it got hard. David turned his chair to face a video screen on the wall. It showed Dr. Emily in her control room. She looked busy. Technicians were running around in the background, carrying tablets and checking gauges. Emily, David said. The flagship is down. But we still have a lot of work to do. How is the recharge going? Emily looked up at the camera and wiped sweat from her forehead. The rails are cooling down, David. But we don't need to wait for a full recharge. The system is designed to fire rapidly. The moon's rotation provides the spin, and the magnetic coils just need a quick reset. We can fire again in 30 seconds. 30 seconds, David asked. Are the rails stable? Emily nodded. They were built for this. The heat is high, but within safety limits. We can keep this up for a while. Load the next payload, David ordered. Target the largest ships in the center of their formation. Let's break their backbone. Emily turned to her team. You heard the man. Load round 2. Target the heavy cruisers. Let's go. On the surface of the moon, the massive railgun hummed with power. The cooling vents opened, releasing steam into the vacuum. The magnetic rings glowed a soft blue. Inside the chamber, another tungsten rod was loaded into position. It was a simple piece of metal, 20 feet long and weighing tons. But powered by the moon-sized magnetic coils, it would become a weapon of mass destruction. In the cockpit of his Wraith fighter, James was watching the scene unfold. He and Anna were circling at a safe distance, observing the battle. James, Anna said over the radio. They aren't moving. Look at them. They are huge, but they are just drifting. They are scared, James said. They never thought the prey could bite back. Suddenly, a bright flash erupted from the moon again. Here comes the hammer, James said. The second projectile shot across the void of space. It was invisible to the naked eye for most of its journey, a blur of motion. It slammed into a massive supply ship in the center of the alien formation. The impact was catastrophic. The supply ship, which was filled with fuel and ammunition for the fleet, exploded violently. The chain reaction was magnificent. The explosion from the supply ship hit the ships next to it. Those ships cracked and broke apart. Debris flew in every direction. The silence of space was filled with silent fire. 3 huge ships disappeared in a cloud of plasma. On the bridge of the Krell, Commander Hax watched in horror as the center of his fleet vaporized. The shock wave from the explosion hit his ship, shaking it violently. Lights popped and sparked. Report. Hax screamed. The Reliant is gone. The officer yelled. The sword and the shield are destroyed. We are taking hull damage. Hax fell back into his chair. He realized with a cold dread that they were going to die. All of them. This was not a battle. It was an extermination. The humans had a weapon that could punch through armor like paper, and they were firing it every minute. Send a message. Hax shouted, though he knew it was useless. Tell them we surrender. Tell them we are leaving. But in the UDC base, the communications officer, Lisa, was watching the incoming transmission. She listened for a second and then turned the volume down. David, Lisa said. They are hailing us. They are screaming about surrender. David didn't even look up from his screen. Ignore it. Sir. I said ignore it, David repeated, his voice cold. They gave us 1 hour to surrender. Then they tried to kill us. We don't have time for their begging. Keep firing. Down in the moon base, Emily's team was working like a machine. They didn't stop. They didn't celebrate the hits. They just loaded and fired. Round 3 away. Emily shouted. Target, the troop transports. The third railgun shot streaked through the debris field. This time, it hit a long, cylindrical ship designed to carry millions of ground troops. The ship was heavily armored on the front for planetary landings, but the railgun hit it from the side. The rod passed through the length of the ship, spinning violently. The ship tore apart from the inside out. Millions of alien soldiers, waiting in their cryosleep pods, never woke up. Their ship became their coffin. James watched the destruction from his cockpit. "Anna, look at the troop transports. They are breaking up." "They were going to invade," Anna said softly. "They were going to come down to Earth and take our homes." "Not anymore," James said. In the UDC command center, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Mark was tracking the countdown. 10 minutes elapsed, Mark announced. 4 minutes remaining on the timeline. David stood up and walked to the large map of the solar system. He looked at the red dots. There were still hundreds of ships left, but they were no longer in a neat formation. They were scattered, running into each other, trying to find a way to escape the invisible trap of gravity. "The main fleet is broken," David said. "Now, we clean up the rest." "Emily, switch to rapid fire mode. Target any ship that tries to power up their main engines." "Copy that," Emily replied. "We are engaging rapid sequence targeting." The railgun on the moon began to fire faster. Boom. 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 Every 20 seconds, a new projectile launched. The humans weren't even aiming for specific vital points anymore. They were just methodically destroying the fleet. It wasn't emotional. It was just math. One shot, one kill. Every 20 seconds, thousands of aliens died. Commander Hax on the Krell watched his screen in disbelief. Every few seconds, another friendly ship icon would blink out. It was relentless. There was no strategy to counter. There was no maneuvering to dodge. The humans just threw rocks at them until they broke. "They are mocking us," Hax whispered. "They are killing us with physics." He looked at the bridge crew. No one was working anymore. They were all just staring at the screen, waiting for their turn. "Is there nothing we can do?" Hax asked quietly. "Sir," the weapons officer said. "I am detecting a smaller ship, a fast courier vessel, launching from the rear of the formation. It is running away at full speed." Hax looked at the screen. A small green dot was moving away from the battle. "The general's son, or maybe a messenger." "The humans are ignoring it," the officer said. "Their moon cannon is focused on the capital ships." Hax closed his eyes. He knew what that meant. The humans didn't care about one small ship escaping. They were confident. They wanted someone to go back and tell the story. They wanted the Empire to know what happened here. "They want a witness," Hax said. "They are letting the runner go." David watched the small ship flee on his monitor. He pointed at it. "Don't fire on that one," David ordered. Sir Mark asked. "Should we hunt it down?" "No," David said. "Let them go. Let them fly back to the Emperor and tell him that Earth is not a place you invade." David looked back at the main fleet. "We still have work to do here." The moon cannon hummed again, charging for another shot. The vibration could be felt in the floors of the bunker. It was the heartbeat of a new era. An era where humanity was no longer at the bottom of the food chain. The 14 minutes were ticking down, and with every shot, the sky above Earth got a little clearer. The terror belonged to the aliens now. They had watched in fear as Earth struck, and now, they were going to watch as their empire turned to dust. The 10th minute arrived, and the silence of space was replaced by a relentless rhythm. It was not the sound of explosions, for space has no air to carry sound. It was the rhythm of death, marked by the flashing of the moon cannon. Every 20 seconds, a bright line would streak across the black void, and another massive Kythorian warship would vanish in a silent flash of light. Inside the UDC base, the air was cool, but the tension made it feel heavy. The hum of the servers and the clicking of keyboards were the only sounds in the command room. David stood with his arms crossed, watching the main screen. The red dots that represented the alien fleet were disappearing rapidly. 10 minutes ago, there were thousands. Now, there were only a few hundred left. Mark walked over to David with a tablet in his hand. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "We are running the numbers, sir. The accuracy is at 99%. The moon cannon is performing better than the simulations predicted." "Good," David said. "What about the ground troops?" "The alien landing crafts never launched," Mark replied. "They were waiting for the flagship to clear the path. With the fleet destroyed, the landing barges are sitting in the lower atmosphere like ducks. They are defenseless." David nodded. He knew that the aliens had brought soldiers. Millions of them, ready to walk on Earth's soil and enslave the population. He pressed the intercom button. "Lisa, patch me through to the Air Force Command. Tell them the sky is clear. They are free to engage the dropships at will." "Already done, sir," Lisa replied from her desk. Her fingers were dancing across the keys. "The fighter squadrons are having a field day. The aliens can't fight back without their motherships for cover." High above the Earth, James and Anna were flying their Wraith fighters through the debris field. The view from the cockpit was a graveyard of twisted metal. But below them, the fight was still on. Dozens of alien drop ships, large and ugly, were trying to descend into the atmosphere. They were slow and bulky. "Wraith leader to all units," James said over the radio. "Let's help the boys on the ground. Take out those dropships before they land." "Copy that," Anna said. She banked her fighter sharply and dove toward a large alien transport. She locked her missiles and fired. 2 streaks of white smoke shot from her wings and slammed into the alien engine. The dropship spun out of control and burned up in the atmosphere. "That's for Texas," Anna whispered. On the bridge of the Krell, Commander Hax was slumped in his chair. The situation was hopeless. The reports coming in were all the same. Sector 4 destroyed. Sector 7 gone. The Iron Fist is debris. "Sir!" an officer shouted, his voice filled with panic. "The moon cannon is turning toward us. They are locking onto the Krell." Hax looked up at the main screen. The view zoomed in on the moon. He could see the flash of the railgun firing. He knew there was nothing he could do. His ship was one of the few left that had functioning shields, but they were weak from the gravity mines. "Evasive maneuvers!" Hax yelled, out of habit. The helmsman tried to pull the ship to the side, but it was too slow. The tungsten rod slammed into the Krell not in the center, but in the side engine pod. The impact was devastating. The ship groaned and shuddered, listing heavily to the left. Lights went out all over the bridge. "Report!" Hax screamed, grabbing the edge of his console to stay upright. "The engine is destroyed." The helmsman cried. "We are venting atmosphere. We are losing power." Hax looked around the dark bridge. His crew was terrified. Some were crying. He realized that the humans were not trying to capture them. They were not trying to negotiate. They were simply erasing them. It was a cold, calculated extermination. "Is there any way to restore the main drive?" Hax asked. "No, sir," the engineer said. "The impact shattered the drive core. We are dead in the water." Hax looked at the viewscreen one last time. He saw the blue earth, turning peacefully below. He had thought it was a prize. Now he knew it was a predator. He closed his eyes and waited for the end. But the end did not come immediately. The humans had moved on to the next ship. Back in the bunker, Tom, one of the radar operators, spoke up. "Sir, the enemy formation is completely broken. The remaining ships are drifting. Their communications are jammed. They are confused." David looked at the countdown timer. 12 minutes and 30 seconds. "Keep firing," David said calmly. "Don't let them regroup. We have 90 seconds left to make our point." Dr. Emily's voice came over the speaker. "David, the magnetic rails are getting extremely hot. The automatic cooling system is working overtime, but we are pushing the cannon to its limit. If we fire too fast, we risk damaging the mechanism." "Can you hold for 2 more minutes?" David asked. "Yes," Emily said. "But after that, we need a cool down period, or the coils might melt." "Do it," David said. 2 more minutes. That is all we need." The rhythm of the shots continued. Boom. 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 James flew his fighter through a cloud of debris. He looked at his radar. The screen, once full of red enemy signatures, was almost empty. "It's quiet," he said to Anna. "Too quiet." "They are done, James," Anna replied. "Look at the survivors. They are turning off their engines. They are surrendering by floating." James looked at a group of frigates in the distance. Their lights were blinking in a pattern, a universal code for distress and surrender. "They are giving up," James said. "Does the boss want to take prisoners?" "Negative, command," Anna said. "David is clear. No prisoners." James felt a chill. He was a soldier, but this was different. This was total war. "Understood. I am holding position." Inside the bunker, Mark walked over to Lisa. "Did you see that?" Mark asked, pointing at the screen. "The small cruisers are powering down their weapons. They are broadcasting the surrender code on all frequencies." Lisa adjusted her headset. "I see it, Mark. They are begging for mercy." "Should we tell David?" Mark asked. "The invasion is stopped. They can't fight back." Lisa looked at David, who was standing like a statue, staring at the destruction. "No," Lisa said softly. "Look at his face. This isn't just about stopping the invasion. This is about making sure no one ever comes back." The 13th minute began. The moon cannon fired one last time, targeting a massive troop carrier that was trying to hide behind a piece of debris. The carrier exploded. Suddenly, the firing stopped. "David," Emily's voice came over the speaker. "Sequence complete. The timer is at 14 minutes. I am cutting the power to the rails to engage the emergency cooldown." David took a deep breath. The room went silent. Everyone looked at the main screen. The space above Earth was clear. The once dense field of red dots was gone. There was nothing left but a vast field of expanding gas and dust. The Kythorian invasion force, the strongest armada in the galaxy, had been wiped out in exactly 14 minutes. "It is done," Mark whispered. David walked to the front of the room. He looked at the staff. They were looking at him, waiting for an order or a speech. "Status report," David said, his voice steady. Lisa checked her screens. "No enemy ships with active power signatures within the solar system, sir. The courier ship that escaped earlier is now crossing the orbit of Mars. It is heading out of the system at high speed." "Let them go," David said. "And the debris?" Mark asked. "The wrecks are drifting. Some might fall to Earth." "Alert the space agencies," David said. "Let them handle the cleanup. But warn them to stay away from the radioactive cores. We don't want any contamination." David looked at the timer. 14 minutes and 00 seconds. He turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to the surviving alien ships. Even the ones with no power, if they can hear us on emergency receivers." The officer nodded. "Channel open, sir. Audio only." David leaned into the microphone. He spoke slowly and clearly. He knew that General Vex was dead, but other commanders were listening. The Empire was listening. "This is Earth Defense Command," David said. "Your invasion fleet has been destroyed. Your flagship is gone. Your Emperor is watching. We have proven that we can destroy you. We did not use magic. We used physics, determination, and the resolve to survive." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I am authorizing a one-time mercy," David continued. "Any ship that remains powered down and allows us to tractor them in will be treated as prisoners of war. Any ship that attempts to restart its engines or fire a weapon will be shot down immediately. You have until sunrise to comply." David cut the connection. He stood up straight. "Good work, everyone. Lisa, send the report to the president. Tell him the sky is safe." David walked out of the command center. He needed some fresh air. As the heavy steel doors closed behind him, the room erupted in cheers. Mark hugged Lisa. Tom and Sarah high-fived. They had done the impossible. They had saved the world in less time than it takes to eat lunch. Up in space, among the floating wreckage, a few lights blinked on the surviving ships. They were accepting their fate. The terror had paralyzed them. The realization that the humans were not the weak species they expected had broken their spirit. The Empire had made a mistake. They had poked a sleeping tiger, and the tiger had bitten their head off. The 14 minutes were over, but the legend of Earth had just begun. The sun began to rise over the Rocky Mountains, casting a warm, golden light over the UDC base. Inside the mountain, the lights were still dim, but the mood had changed completely. The tension that had gripped the room for hours was gone. People were hugging, laughing, and crying with relief. They had done the impossible. They had saved the world. David walked back into the command room after taking a short break. He looked fresher, but his eyes were still serious. He saw Mark and Lisa sitting together at a desk, sharing a cup of coffee. They looked exhausted but happy. "Get some rest, you two," David said. "The shift is over." Lisa shook her head. "I'm too awake to sleep now, sir. I want to see this through." "Me too," Mark added. "I want to know what they do next." David nodded and walked to the main console. The big screen now showed a live feed from the surviving alien ships. There weren't many left. Most were small frigates or transport ships. They were drifting in space, dark and cold. The humans had tractor beams ready to pull them in, but the aliens weren't moving. "Open a channel to the alien flagship, or what is left of their command structure," David ordered. The communications officer typed for a moment. "I have a signal from a ship called the Krell, sir. It is heavily damaged, but they are answering." A voice came over the speakers. It was shaky and full of static. "This is Commander Hax of the Krell. We hear you, Earth. We are powering down our weapons. Do not fire." David leaned into the microphone. "Commander Hax. You are listening to me, so you know I speak the truth. We have destroyed your invasion force. We can destroy you too. But we are not monsters. We are giving you a choice." On the bridge of the Krell, Commander Hax looked at his crew. They were huddled on the floor, covered in dust and dirt. The ship was groaning as it floated helplessly. Hax felt a deep shame in his chest. He had been so confident. He had been so arrogant. "We are listening," Hax said into the radio. "You have 24 hours, David's voice continued. "Repair your ships just enough to fly. Then, you will leave this solar system. Go back to your emperor. Tell him what happened here. Tell him that Earth is not a place to be conquered. Tell him that if he sends another fleet, we will not aim for his ships. We will aim for his home planet." The line went silent for a moment. Hax could not believe what he was hearing. They were letting them go. The humans had the power to kill every single one of them, but they were offering mercy. It confused him. The Kythorian Empire showed no mercy. They crushed those they defeated. "Do you understand?" David asked. "Yes," Hax whispered. "We understand. We will leave. And we will tell him." "Good," David said. "Don't make us come find you." The connection cut. Inside the UDC base, the room was quiet again. "You let them go," Mark said, sounding a little surprised. "Is that wise? They know about the moon cannon now." "They know we have it," David corrected. "But they don't know how we built it. They don't know the limits. And fear is a powerful weapon, Mark. A survivor with a scary story is better than a martyr." Lisa looked up from her screen. "Sir, the courier ship that escaped earlier, it just jumped to light speed. It is gone." David smiled a cold smile. "Good. That means the Emperor will hear about this very soon." High above the Earth, the remaining alien ships began to move slowly. They turned their noses away from the blue planet. Their engines flickered to life, weakly at first, and then stronger. One by one, they accelerated, leaving the graveyard of their brothers behind. They fled into the dark void of space, terrified of the small world behind them. In his fighter jet, James watched them go. He was flying patrol to make sure they didn't turn around. "Looks like they are running home," Anna said over the radio. "Yeah," James replied. "Let them go. I need a burger and a bed about now." "Me too," Anna laughed. "Good job, James." "Good job, Anna." Slowly, the Wraith Squadron turned back toward Earth. They followed the curve of the atmosphere, watching the sun rise over the ocean. It was the most beautiful thing James had ever seen. Back in the bunker, David walked to the back of the room where a large map of the galaxy hung on the wall. He took a marker and drew a line through the Kythorian sector. "Sir," a young soldier asked. "Is it over?" David turned around. "For today, it is over. But tomorrow starts a new chapter. The galaxy knows we are here now. We aren't hiding anymore. The story shifts, far away from Earth, to a world bathed in purple light. This was the capital world of the Kythorian Empire. The Emperor sat on a throne made of black crystal. He was waiting for news. He expected a report saying that Earth was burning and the slaves were being rounded up. The massive doors to the throne room opened. A single courier walked in. He was limping. His clothes were torn. He fell to his knees in front of the emperor. "What is this?" the emperor boomed. "Where is General Vex? Where is the fleet?" The courier trembled. He could barely speak. "Gone, Your Highness. All gone." The emperor stood up. He was a giant of a creature, terrifying to look at. "What do you mean, gone? Do not lie to me." "They destroyed us," the courier cried. "They fired rocks from their moon. Invisible weapons. Gravity traps. In 14 minutes, Your Highness. 14 minutes. The flagship, the dreadnoughts, they are just dust now. The humans let me live to tell you." The emperor stared at the courier. He looked around the room at his advisors. They were all pale. The emperor looked at the star map on the wall. He found the small yellow dot of the Sol system. For thousands of years, they had ignored it. They thought it was inhabited by primitive apes. He remembered the warning from the human voice, "Tell him that if he sends another fleet, we will aim for his Sunday." The emperor felt a shiver run down his spine. He had ruled for a long time. He had crushed many enemies. But he had never faced an enemy that could destroy an entire fleet in minutes without blinking. The humans had technology they shouldn't have. They had a ruthlessness that matched his own. "Close the borders," the emperor ordered. "No one goes near the Sol system." "But, Your Highness," an advisor stammered. "We must avenge our honor." "Honor?" the emperor shouted. "There is no honor in suicide. These humans, they are not primitives. They are a sleeping dragon. And we just poked it." He walked back to his throne and sat down heavily. "Send a message to all sectors. Earth is forbidden. Any ship that enters their territory will be destroyed by us, before the humans can do it. We will erase them from our maps. We will pretend they do not exist." The advisor bowed low. "As you command." The emperor looked at the dark ceiling of his palace. He realized that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. A new player had entered the game, and they played for keeps. The terror he felt was not something he was used to. It was the fear of the unknown. On Earth, the sun was fully up. People came out of their homes and shelters. They looked up at the sky, which was clear of ships. The news showed the victory over and over again. They knew about the moon cannon. They knew about David and the team at the UDC. David walked out of the mountain base and stood on the grass. The air smelled fresh and sweet. He took off his jacket and felt the warmth of the sun on his face. Mark and Lisa came out behind him. "What now, boss?" Mark asked. "Do we go back to hiding?" David looked at the horizon. "No. No more hiding. We build a bigger cannon. We build more ships. We make sure that if anyone else comes looking for trouble, they regret it before they even say hello." Lisa smiled. "I like that. The human race is officially open for business." David chuckled. "Yeah. But it's going to be a bad day for anyone who tries to mess with us." The three friends stood there, watching the day begin. The sky was empty, and the birds were singing. The 14 minutes of terror were over. The silence that followed was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of respect. The universe was watching Earth now, and they were watching with wide eyes and fear. The Empire was obliterated, and humanity was still standing. They were quiet, but they were ready. The era of Earth had truly begun.